and there are important files in the bag. The thief runs toward a fence, uses his right hand to push off and jump. Then our protag activates his throwing skill. He throws the bag with all his might, and bang! He hits the leg the thief was going to use for support, causing him to fall face first to the ground. The next chapter starts with the thief being handcuffed, while Howard collects Sandy's papers from the ground. He wonders if she's mad at him for throwing her papers at the guy, but the truth is that she found it amazing. She can't believe he managed to hit the thief from that distance and even asks him to teach her. The people who were chasing the thief offer to help them gather the papers, and the woman whose bag was stolen says it's the least they can do. As they collect the items, Howard finds a card from a company called Aguile Capital and asks if this card was among the files. Sandy confirms that it was, and this company is an important business partner of theirs. The owner, a certain Mr. Lawrence, is the head of one of the world's top 100 companies. Howard thinks that name sounds familiar. Then Sandy says there's a rumor that their company's Mrs. Luo is dating this guy, and they're going on a cruise together. Then Howard remembers. Howard is the guy Sabrina mentioned in the dream. He gets up and tells her to hurry so they won't be late for the social. While telling himself to stop thinking about it, it was just a game. Arriving at the mansion, Sandy says the social will take place in the backyard of the mansion. She begins to give him directions to get there, but when she realizes he's already going in, she doesn't care. He knows this place better than anyone, so he takes the lead and they arrive at the social. Sandy is impressed, saying he found the place easily as if he were in his own home, but the protagonist doesn't respond. He only has eyes for one thing: her. Sabrina was before him, looking beautiful in a magnificent dress. Mr. Liu tells everyone to make themselves comfortable, and that now that everyone from the department had arrived, they would begin the meeting. Sandy, by now quite interested in getting to know our protag better, puts her arm around him and tells them to sit together. Sabrina watched from a distance. She didn't seem to like what she saw. Then Mr. Liu starts talking about their company's plan for the online business of the network of stores and blah 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 boring business stuff. Howard asks if Mrs. Luo also works in the marketing department, and Sandy says yes. In fact, it was established under her leadership because she is more than an executive. Her father is the company's president. She was much more powerful than Mr. Liu. Howard pretends to be impressed and then asks about Mr. Liu, whether she thinks he's too young to be the company's vice president. Sandy says that he grew up with Sabrina. They've been very close since they were children, and everyone sort of thought they would make a top couple. Howard asks how Mrs. Luo ended up with this guy Lawrence, but Sandy says that the rich have their own lifestyle, and that she would like to live like that too. He wishes her luck while thinking it's better to leave what happened in the dream to the imagination. He already had his own problems, like a family debt of almost $1 million to pay. Sabrina and he had no chance of being together. Some time passes, and Mr. Liu finally says the meeting is over, and it's time to start the fun.
1, 2, 3, sentado, 4, 6, 7, sentado, 7.
Sandy, who was having wine with our protagonist, comments that she really likes the music and that the wealthy have very good taste. Mr. Liu says the last time he danced with Sabrina, they were teenagers, and he asks her if she would do him the honor, and she accepts immediately, while Howard observes with a hint of jealousy. A waiter arrives with the most expensive picanha, and Sandy says that a steak like that must cost almost a month's salary for her. Howard asks how a piece of meat can be so expensive. She says he sounds like a country bumpkin saying that and that he should forget about poverty today and just enjoy a party at the rich people's house. Howard says she's right. He's going to enjoy the evening. So he proposes that they toast their wine glasses. But as soon as he says that, he looks at Sabrina, and at that moment, a memory from the dream comes to him, with both of them talking about a wine he found in the mansion's cellar that was actually fake. Howard says he chose it for a special moment, and Sabrina says it's fine. The taste was perfectly sweet to her. Then we see the real-life Sabrina watching Howard drink the same wine, but with someone else. Man, what a mess. Some time at the party passes. Our protagonist sees people gossiping about how Sabrina and this Mr. Liu are a match made in heaven. Since they were kids, through high school and so on, they always sat together. They were meant for each other. Howard thinks this guy seems trustworthy, and Sabrina will have a happy life with him, and maybe that's the best for everyone. He's so lost in these thoughts that he puts his hands over the meat steam without even realizing it, until he notices his hands are burning. Sandy tells him he's an idiot since the waiter had just placed left the food there. She says she will help him. She rinses his hand with water, genuinely concerned about the burn. He thanks her, feeling a bit embarrassed, and that's enough for everyone at the party to start assuming they're a couple, including Sabrina, who watches all of this with a sad expression. Mr. Liu notices, but before he can say anything, 3 guys show up at the party out of nowhere. The one in the middle says he heard that Sabrina was going to accept a job in the marketing department, so he came to congratulate her. He didn't expect to find people having a party, let alone see Mr. Lawrence's fiancée dancing with another man. Our protagonist watches this and asks who the guy is. Sandy answers that his name is Hans, and he works at Aguila Capital as a general manager, and that Lawrence really likes him. In other words, he's the boss's henchman. Mr. Liu tells the henchman it's just a dance. There's no need to overthink it. After all, isn't it normal for people to dance at parties? Sabrina elegantly says she appreciates his presence, but that it was an internal company meeting. The guy doesn't hear a single word she said and keeps staring at her cleavage. She goes on to say he's more than welcome to come to her office tomorrow to talk business, but now it might be time to leave. The henchman tells her not to rush. It was just a misunderstanding. He says he had nothing better to do, so he decided to join the party. He mentions that he's a good dancer and asks Sabrina if she'd like to dance with him. The gay friend instantly steps in to defend her, saying he and Sabrina are old friends, but that it's extremely inappropriate to invite her to dance like that. These guys are masters at telling someone off with elegance. The henchman says it's just a dance. It's not like he's overthinking it. I lost in the argument there. Sabrina touches Mr. Liu's shoulder and says the henchman, Hans, is a business partner of theirs, so they should be kind. The guy is all smiles, and she reluctantly shakes his hand. Everyone at the party had stopped to watch the scene, but the henchman didn't care at all. He even said from now on, he would be responsible for picking her up and taking her to Lawrence whenever she wanted to see him. Sabrina simply thanks him. The guy says the pleasure is his, pulling her closer. Sabrina senses the guy's malice and tells him not to do it anymore. He says he won't do it anymore, but internally he's calling her a bitch and telling her to stop pretending. Okay, folks, we have someone to hate. Sandy says Mr. Liu must be furious, but there's nothing he can do. After all, their company relies heavily on this business partnership with Lawrence's company. The protagonist just watches in silence, the henchman dancing with Sabrina, his wandering hand going lower and lower, until Sabrina grabs him by the arm and tells him he's not much of a dancer and that they're done for today. The guy says he's just a bit rusty. Sandy says Mr. Liu is behaving like a coward for not doing anything and tells Howard to stop just watching, but he doesn't even listen to her. The protagonist is simply furious, and his hand holding the wine glass is trembling. In his thoughts, the henchman calls Sabrina a bitch, asks himself how she dares to embarrass him in front of everyone, and decides to teach her a lesson. So he steps on her dress and pushes the woman backward. Her dress starts to tear, and she'd end up naked in front of everyone. But Howard, who watched everything without saying a word, decides to act, and activated his special ability. So, my friends, a scorching hot piece of meat flies through the air to land right in the asshole henchman's eyes, and he screams in pain. This makes him release Sabrina's dress, which falls to the ground, but at least she's not naked. At this point, the music stops, and everyone stands up. The henchman, who was now furious, tells everyone not to move and orders his henchman to find the person who threw that meat in his face. Howard shows no sign of concern, not even when the guy's minion approaches their table. But this was also thanks to Sandy, who quickly realized that the protagonist was in trouble and gave him half of her meat. Quick thinking, huh? She thinks to herself that Howard threw a piece of meat in the guy's face when not even Mr. Liu had the guts to do anything. He really has balls. The minions say they found nothing, but the guy gets pissed because a piece of meat couldn't have just appeared out of thin air and hit him on the head. But as he was about to order the minions to continue looking, someone slapped him hard in the face. It was none other than Sabrina. Her slap was so powerful that it made the guy fall to the ground. She tells him to get his minions and get out of there once and for all because she can't stand to look at him. At this point, the people at the party, which had turned into a circus by this time, were left in awe of her attitude. Even Howard was impressed and thankful he never received a slap like that in the dream. The henchman stands up pissed off, and Sabrina says that being nice was courtesy, but it doesn't mean he could do whatever he wanted. The gay friend adds that that's right. Who does he think he is? Moreover, if he didn't leave, they would call the police. The henchman was about to say something something, but one of the minions calls him and whispers something in his ear. Suddenly, the guy calms down and says there was no need for all of this. He just came to say hi but was already leaving. No one understood exactly what happened, but Sabrina tells them to let it go, and she would go change. Some time passes, and we see Sandy knocking back one bottle of wine after another, until Howard asks her if she doesn't think it's enough already. She says it's all good and that he should drink with her, but he says he's not much of a drinker. The woman sees he's playing hard to get and decides to step up her game. She says drinking alone isn't fun, and suggests that for every 3 glasses she drinks, he has to drink 1, and Howard, not wanting to be impolite to the woman, agrees. Some time passes, and guess what? The woman was plastered. She'd even passed out. Howard tries to ask her where she lives, but she can't even talk, until suddenly she jumps on the table and starts babbling a bunch of nonsense. Sandy is completely wasted. Then she stumbles, and the protagonist realizes she's going to fall, and she falls, but with her in his face. The woman climbed on top of the guy on the party table in front of everyone. She starts licking his face, running her hand inside his shirt, and even rubbing... Yikes! The waiter arrives utterly embarrassed and says he didn't want to interrupt, but unfortunately, they're closing. He then hands them the bill, which shocks Howard instantly. 1 pork rib, 1 shrimp, and 1 lamb cost over $400, man. That's crazy. Later in the night, Sandy was obviously going to need a ride home, but in this case, it was to the protagonist's house. She asks him where he's taking her, and he says it's his house, and he should spend the night there because he couldn't put her in an Uber in that state all alone. She calls him a smooth talker because they met for the first time that day, and he's already taking her to spend the night at his house. But as they talked, a strange figure watched in silence, standing in the dark. Howard throws the young woman on the bed, and she asks him to hug her. He backs away and tells her to go to sleep. He thinks that he hasn't even started in the new department, and he's already going to be the center of gossip again. Sandy is feeling everything spinning, but she still somehow wants to be with our protagonist and decides she needs to do something before she passes out completely. So she starts to get up. Howard asks her what she wants, and the woman just goes for it with everything she's got. She throws herself on him and they fall to the ground. She's with an expression of then starts undressing. Howard grabs her hand and says this is going to be a disaster. She says she knows he also feels and starts taking off his belt while getting very close to his ear, telling him not to be afraid because he can... Howard tells himself that this situation is irresistible for any normal young man. His little man was about to burst out of his underwear, and when he thought he couldn't hold back any longer, she stops. Then he realizes that she's passed out. She's gone, but not before belching the stinkiest burp right in his face, making him recoil instantly. At least he's now sober. He puts her back in bed and covers her. He realizes it's already 2 in the morning and decides to try to get some sleep on the couch. So that's it, folks. Never take advantage of a drunk person, especially a woman. Respect points to our protagonist. Good night, and all seemed quiet until we heard the sound of the door opening. Howard, who was lying in the living room, heard it too. He realizes there's a strange guy inside his apartment and immediately gets up. The guy is standing there, looking at Sandy while she's asleep, with a creepy expression, saying she's wonderful. Man, what the hell is this? Howard appears and asks what the hell he's doing there and how the fuck he got into the apartment. The guy simply tells him to speak softly and says that he's already had enough fun with her, and asks why he doesn't let him have her just this once. Man, seriously. Howard can't believe what he heard, and immediately grabs the guy by the neck, telling him to get out of there. But the guy manages to spin and throw him hard to the ground, then says he's too stubborn. They could have had a peaceful conversation. While taking off Sandy's panties, he says that if Howard lets him do whatever he wants with the woman, he'll owe him one. He says he can give him money when he gets rich and that he hasn't touched a woman in 20 years. Then, with her panties in his hands, he asks if Howard understands him, since they're both men, and then throws the panties in Howard's face. Man, honestly, even I want to punch this guy in the face. Howard, who by now was consumed by rage, calls the guy sick, and then grabs a chair and goes after the guy with all his might. But the bastard manages to defend himself, and the chair simply shatters into several pieces. The guy continues trying to negotiate the woman with Howard, saying that everyone would die for a favor from him. The protag, realizing that he can't beat the guy in a fight, decides to call the police right away, but then the guy chickens out and says there's no need for that. Howard asks if he's kidding. The guy simply invaded his house and tried to assault his colleague. Does he think he's going to get what? Applause? He should go to hell. Then the guy goes after Howard to try to stop him from calling the police, saying he misunderstood everything. He says he thought the woman was an escort, that she had come to do a job for him, and that it's not normal for people to sleep together on the first date. Howard asks what the hell he's talking about, and the guy starts to say that he's been away for the past few years and no longer has any idea what people do on first dates now. Oh man, for the love of God, please, someone punch this guy in the face. Howard asks what kind of excuse that is and why the guy was waiting at his door, spying on his apartment. Then the guy says that this apartment was his 20 years ago and that he had come back to retrieve the things he hid there. He goes to a corner of the apartment and lifts a loose board, and there really was a box there. He opens the box, and it's filled with jewelry, rings, and gold chains. Then he explains that 20 years ago, this apartment was full of prostitutes, and he took great risks to obtain these things. Howard says that it doesn't matter what kind of crap he did in his past, and that he even attempted to assault his friend. The guy says it was a misunderstanding, and anyway, he hadn't caused any real harm to her. Then he says that he, Josh Tai, is not a good person, but he's not an intimidator either. He follows his own rules. He tells Howard to help his friend get dressed as he's leaving. Howard says he still thinks it's better to call the police on him, so the guy starts getting annoyed, asking if the protag really thinks he can stop him. And he says the woman could simply say that it was him who tried to assault her. Then he hands our protag a box and tells him to forget what happened. Howard asks if he's trying to bribe him. The guy says he seems like an upright guy, and that it's just an iron ring that isn't worth much but is unique. Then he says that ever since the day he got that ring, he kept dreaming of the same woman, a woman in a red coat holding a golden scepter, and her eyes glowed with a blue light. Howard immediately realizes that the AI from the dream fits the description perfectly. The guy goes on to say that he couldn't understand a word she was saying, found the woman hot, and even tried to flirt with her, but she wanted nothing to do with him and even beat him up. So he could do whatever he wanted with this ring, like, I don't know, sell it to someone who enjoys getting beaten or something. Howard tells him to wait because that's bribery, but the guy doesn't want to hear it and just leaves. Howard wonders if this box has anything to do with the world of dreams. When he opens it, he sees an iron ring with a red gem that emits strange lights, and then his left eye begins to activate a visual system again, and in front of him, a hologram is formed. It's a hologram of a woman who claims to be the developer of the dream system. She says that under immense pressure, this was the only way to leave this message, and she hopes it can help the target of the tests. She goes on to say that he fell into a trap. The dream system could blur the boundaries of social levels, law, and moral standards in reality. The user can hardly notice that their mindset is changing. When the user returns to real life, a huge gap between dream and reality will unleash greed, violence, and dark thoughts from their soul. The developers seem to enjoy messing with people's lives, and she couldn't persuade them to improve the system. The woman continues, saying she hopes he can stay alert to his changes so he won't succumb to the impulses of life. She mentions that she left some communication devices in each dream challenge, and they can help him get rid of the system and all the trouble. Finally, she tells him to meet her, and then she disappears. Howard tells himself that this woman is just like I-63, and as long as he feels normal, he won't commit any crimes. He's actually managing to control his impulses. Howard finds it strange how that strange guy saw IA-63 2 decades ago and wonders about the real importance of that ring. But something interrupts his thoughts. It was the alarm clock, saying it was already 7 in the morning, time to go to work. Sandy also wakes up to the alarm clock, and when she realizes she's without panties, she screams as loud as she can. The day truly begins, and now Howard and Sandy are a couple. The guy at the street vendor even tells the protag that it's no wonder he turned down his offer to find a girl. After all, he already had a crush. He says they make a cute couple, and breakfast today is on the house. This guy is really nice. Sandy is happy to know that Howard had a crush on her before, and she says she should have noticed, while Howard is just wondering why this is happening to him. Haha. Arriving at the company building, gossip obviously runs wild. People are talking about how the old team leader used to pursue Sandy, and she blew him off to be with Howard. The old team leader is that brown noser, and this guy is more furious than ever because Howard not only stole the promotion he wanted, but also the woman he had a crush on. Meanwhile, the two of them were truly living like a couple. Sandy was even making plans for them to go to the movies tonight, and Howard was thinking about how to tell her that he didn't even have money to go to the cinema. He'd probably have to borrow some cash from Donald. Sandy mentions that it would be a good idea to stop by a pharmacy to buy the morning after pill, and as soon as she says that, guess who shows up? The one and only, Sabrina. She greets the two and says that she can see they've made great progress in their relationship. Sandy regrets her behavior at the social event and says she's embarrassed. Then Sabrina throws a hint at Howard, saying she thought he would take things slowly, but he certainly surprised her. Howard just stays silent, not saying anything. Sandy says she thought the same, that he seemed like a reserved gentleman until last night when she let her guard down, and he just went for it. Howard is extremely embarrassed and says she doesn't need to go into details, but it's already in the past. Sabrina, on the inside, felt a mix of emotions she couldn't describe, but on the outside, she simply says that she's happy for them and hopes they can maintain a professional demeanor in the office. Then she leaves the elevator, leaving an awkward atmosphere. Sandy says that Sabrina has no right to say that to her, especially considering she's involved with two different men. But Howard says she's right. As long as they're here, it's better to focus on their work. Sandy gets upset and says she's his waifu now, and he has to support her unconditionally unless their relationship was just a fling, and he never thought about having a family with her. This touches our protag's weak spot, folks. When you mention family, he immediately softens, so he says she's right, and he should prioritize their relationship above all else. She hugs him and says, "That's right, puppy. I'm not kidding. She actually said that." Then she tells him to go to work and she'll be waiting downstairs at the end of the day. She takes his hand and leads it to her butt while saying, Meanwhile, we see Mr. Liu telling Sabrina that she's pushing herself too hard and that she shouldn't be too busy even to have lunch. She says she's not hungry and has a lot to do in the new department. He says they've been friends for many years and he knows when she's lying, and in reality, she's anxious. Then he taps her desk, looks her in the eyes, and asks if it's because of Howard. Sabrina hesitates for a moment and then says she doesn't know what he's talking about. At that moment, who should arrive but Howard himself, telling Mr. Liu that he's finished the list he asked for. Mr. Liu thanks him and asks him to come over and show it to them, which makes Sabrina even more anxious. He compliments Howard's work, saying it's well done and concise, but Howard isn't paying much attention because he's standing in front of Sabrina. They both feel like they have a lot to say to each other, but at the same time, it's like there's a giant barrier between them. Liu asks why Howard's looking down, if there's something on his mind. Howard tries to divert the conversation and says he was just looking at the plant in the vase, but when he takes a closer look and realizes what plant it is, his heart starts beating faster. It's a tomato plant. Sabrina's heart also races, and they finally lock eyes. Sabrina says he seems to know a lot about tomatoes, and he says yes, he knows them very well. And it's true. When they were in the post-apocalyptic world, Sabrina used to grow tomatoes. He remembers it very well. He remembers the day when they only had one tomato and a cabbage leaf to eat. He will never forget that. Sabrina asks if he recognizes these plants from anywhere, and he says yes. He wants to tell her everything, all the memories, express what he feels for her. His heart beats stronger than ever. Then he remembers the boss talking about people who try to bite off more than they can chew. He remembers the AI saying it was just a game, and now it's over. He remembers the game creator saying he couldn't be manipulated by his impulses. He remembers Sandy and the relationship they have now. But above all, he remembers her face on a snowy day, her smile. Howard trembles, and when he finally gathers the courage to say something, he mentions that he once saw a tomato plant in his hometown. Even Mr. Liu commented that after all this tension, he expected some shocking secret behind this tomato plant. Howard deflects, saying that tomatoes have no secrets. He pretends to believe it and then asks Sabrina and her why she would have a tomato plant in her office. She gets tense for a moment, then responds that she must have planted the wrong seeds and she'll have the plant in the pot replaced tomorrow. Oh man, that one hurt. Liu asks if that's all, and she says yes, and Howard is left disappointed. Sometime later, he went to the bathroom to wash his face, telling himself that he narrowly avoided something. The real Sabrina is not the same as the Sabrina in the dream, but he still doesn't understand why he can't stop thinking about her. Then we see Sabrina in her office, thanking her lucky stars that she managed to keep her composure. Otherwise, that situation would have been very embarrassing. Howard tells himself that the game developer is right. He was almost falling into the game's trap and only just realized it. In the game, he got used to using weapons and killing. If he continued down that path, what kind of man would he have become? He's just a humble employee, and she is the daughter of the company's president. Nothing will happen between them. Sabrina thinks about how that dream felt so real, how she and that man lived together for 180 days, went through many difficult things, but now it was time to forget about it. Both of them, at the same time, decide to put an end to it. The dream is over, and from now on, they are no longer involved. The workday comes to an end, and our protagonist asked his buddy Donald for some help through messaging because he was going out with his waifu. Donald, who is a really nice guy, sends the money via a mobile payment system and says that if he needs more, he can charge it to his credit card. Howard says it's all good and that he'll pay him back when he gets his salary. Then he goes to meet Sandy, but when he finds her, she's talking to the sycophantic guy. The guy says he's worried that she might be deceived, and she says she doesn't need him to tell her that. Howard intervenes and asks if he tried to hurt her. She says no, and the sycophantic guy mentions that, unlike some people, he's honest and harmless, and he was just telling Sandy to stay away from hypocrites. But anyway, he had already said what he wanted, so he was leaving. Howard says that this guy has always been unpleasant and tells Sandy to just ignore him. Then he asks if she wants to go see that movie in the cinema. She simply says she wants to break up, lets go of his hand, takes a step to the side, and says once again that she wants to break up, this time more clearly. Howard doesn't say anything. She says that, to be honest, they don't know much about each other, so she asks Howard how much his family's debt is. He takes a deep breath and says, 200,000. The woman is almost in shock and thinks that 200,000 is a lot for an office worker who earns just a few thousand per month. So, she asks him to leave her out of it. She's not from a wealthy family and is not as capable as he thinks she is, and deep down, she knows he's not really interested in her. She just hates the fact that Sabrina attracts the attention of all the nice guys. One thing leads to another, and then it happened, but she doesn't deserve him, so she asks him to forget about last night and leaves. And that's how, my friends, our protagonist lost 2 women in a single day. Arriving home, he thinks to himself that it's not the first time he's been abandoned by a girl. When he was in college, his first love left him for the same reason. This debt has made life miserable for his whole family, and he's even afraid to look at their sad faces. Howard has thought about starting his own business, but he has never found a project that excited him. He couldn't take it anymore. He needed to do something. When he arrives home, he notices the stove is on and wonders if he forgot something on the stove when he left home. However, that strange guy is sitting on his sofa. He simply says hello in a casual manner, but Howard wants none of it. He confronts the guy in a rage, calling him a scoundrel and asking what he's doing there. He shouts at the guy, saying he tried to assault his colleague and now he's using his cooking pot. What does he think this place is? His house? The guy says he has nowhere else to go and that he got beaten up today trying to find a job. He asks if he could have the mercy to let him stay there for a few days. Brother, Howard kicks the guy out, saying this is his last warning, and if he dares to do this again, he'll call the police. Then he thinks to himself that this is the worst day ever. He smells the food the guy was cooking and goes to see what he was preparing. When he opens the lid, he wonders what the heck it is, if he calls that food, because it looks more like he was trying to poison someone. Then some time passes, and Howard opens his door. With a strange look, he invites the guy inside, then says that the thing he was cooking is amazing. He asks if the guy is a Michelin chef or something, and if he knows how to cook anything else. The guy says he knows a bit about cooking. Howard says he's a great cook and could get a job at any restaurant, then asks why he got beaten up. The guy asks if he doesn't see it. He's an ex-convict. He doesn't know how to use a smartphone or even write a resume. He just wants to live a trouble-free life like everyone else. But it's difficult. Poor thing. He's a victim of society. Howard then asks if he's interested in running a restaurant with him. The guy thinks for a moment and says that as long as he doesn't mind his criminal record, they can talk business. Howard says it's okay. He won't inquire about the guy's past, and he'll find a place for them to start their restaurant. The guy asks if he doesn't think they're moving too fast, because those who check his criminal record get scared. He asks if Howard is sure he has the courage to work with him. Howard thinks for a while and then says he's tired of feeling like a sewer rat when he talks about his family with others, and that this could be a good shot. For a man to have meat, he first needs to deal with the wolf, and for the wolf to have meat, it can't attack the man. He stops in front of the guy, looks into his eyes and says he's willing to take the risk as long as it's worth it. Then he reaches out to the guy, who thought he wanted to shake hands, but in reality, he wanted the jewels the guy had hidden in the apartment to sell and rent a place. The guy then says he spent everything on hookers, Paraguayan cigarettes, and 51, and Howard can't believe it. His idea of the restaurant didn't seem to have much of a future. Until sometime later, his phone rings. He answers, and hears Sandy's voice. She tells him she feels bad about the things she said to him, and doesn't want him to think she's a gold digger who's only with someone for their money. He tells her to cut the small talk and get to the point. She says she wants to help him, that she's found a way to make quick money, and asks if he's interested. Without even thinking twice, he responds, yes. We see our dear Mr. Liu facing Sabrina. He tells her that the guy, Howard Chen, is an excellent employee. He completed a whole week's worth of work in just one day, and he did it very well. Liu admits he was wrong. He thought she was having an affair with Howard, but in reality, she was just trying to bring an excellent employee to the department. She has a great taste in choosing employees. Sabrina finds it amusing that he's talking about having an affair because he's no saint. She has told him several times to replace his secretary. Speaking of her, the secretary appears, letting Mr. Liu know that the driver was waiting for him. But wait a minute, wasn't Mr. Liu? Sabrina looks at the woman, and memories flood her mind. Memories of the day her father forced her to witness this same woman in the act with another employee. She definitely wasn't a nun. Liu reminds Sabrina that they made an agreement not to talk about each other's private lives. Sabrina just calls him an idiot. Speaking of idiots, our protagonist hadn't even started, but he was already regretting accepting Sandy's offer. And what was the offer? Well, she and two friends do live streams on the Purple site, kind of hardcore streams, wearing strange clothes and doing things that people don't normally do to get attention. And no, it's not anything +18, 18, just strange things. And Sandy's invitation is for him to participate in the next live stream. Howard asks if he has to dress like them, and Sandy says yes, and since she saw that he's good at throwing things, the challenge they've prepared for him is to throw darts. They mention they already have 200,000 followers, and he can keep half of the money they make in this live stream. Howard, desperate to make money and finally get rid of his family's damn debt, accepts it. Well, what can he do? The woman in green using the nickname Flatty asks why Sandy called this guy. After all, their live stream is booming with hardcore stuff. What's the fun in throwing darts at a target? And Sandy replies that it doesn't hurt to try something different. But the other woman, dressed in red and using the nickname Chubby, says it's a problem indeed. No pain, no gain. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the world, and they should do something more exciting because this guy there doesn't know anything and doesn't seem to have any fun. Our protagonist, who was just listening, thinks to himself, oh really, let's see then. So, a while later, he appears, and the three women observe the scene. Howard is wearing tight pants and a leather belt as a vest. Man, what happened to our protagonist? This is the same guy who in part 3 was fighting hand-to-hand with killer wolves. The woman in green says it's great, that's exactly what they wanted, but asks why he put on that mask. Another woman answers for Howard, saying it's very embarrassing. He doesn't want people to know who he is. Sandy says that while he was getting dressed, they talked and decided to add a small change to the challenge. Chubby says no one cares if he can hit a target or not. What people really want to see is him getting electric shocks and writhing like a hedgehog. Sandy tells him not to worry. She'll adjust the electric current to make it okay, and Howard just tells them to start already. And then they start the live stream. The two women do the introduction and such, then announce a new challenge today. Darts connected to an electrified mesh. They covered the floor with a dangerous electric mesh, and if the darts don't hit the center of the target, they will give an electric shock to the shooter, just like that. Then they demonstrate how strong the electric shock can be using meat, and man, the meat roasts instantly. These women are crazy. Chubby says to welcome the brave shooter, Slanty. The comments start pouring in. Some express pity for him, others tell him to be careful, and some are super excited. They say he will have 10 darts to throw, and they tell the over 50,000 people watching to leave a like and slide that sub to support the shooter. And come on, family, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, soon I'll have to wear one of those outfits too. Sandy is a bit worried about Howard. After all, they kind of roasted a piece of meat with the shock. She's about to lower the electric current when Chubby grabs her arm and asks if she's crazy. They're not the type of irresponsible content creators who lie to their audience. Sandy says that Howard could really get hurt with this, and Chubby says so what? People earn their daily bread by risking their lives. No pain, no gain. She asks if Sandy thinks their followers don't work hard too. The chat starts cheering for her. Then she turns to Howard and tells him that they let him participate, so he needs to work hard to prove himself. If he thinks it's going to be easy just because it's the internet, he should forget about it and leave right away. Howard doesn't say anything. He simply throws the first dart without much ceremony, and guess what? He hits the bullseye, right on target. He asks if that's enough. The woman can't believe it, says he's good, but she wants more excitement. She says that Slanty is very confident, so now he's going to throw from an even greater distance. Sandy says it's dangerous, but Chubby tells her to shut up. After all, Slanty himself didn't say anything. And indeed, our dear Slanty simply throws the dart, and of course hits the target again. Chubby admits he's amazing. While she talks, he walks backward and throws the next darts. The number of live viewers starts increasing like crazy thanks to the skill of our dear Slanty. I mean, Howard, he keeps throwing more and more darts, throws the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, always taking a step back after each one and hitting all perfectly on target. By this point, they've made it to the trending topics. Howard has reached the door, there's no more room to go back, and the chat is going crazy, calling him the Dart God. Then he releases the remaining darts. Chubby asks him why he stopped. Howard says that before the live started, everyone there expected him to miss and get shocked to entertain the audience, and he wasn't gonna do that just to please people. He doesn't enjoy that kind of thing. If they wanted, they could consider those darts he dropped as mistakes. He doesn't understand what's fun about watching someone screw up, and he really wasn't made for this. His show was over. This was his last live. He says goodbye and leaves, abandoning a live with over 1.8 million people watching. The women are there not knowing what to do, seeing that the live views were dropping drastically, and Chubby apologizes, acknowledging that she went too far. Well, some time passes, the next day arrives, and Howard wakes up to a call. It was Sandy saying that he had gone viral. The protagonist is a bit confused, but then he sees that people were even making memes with his images. He goes to have breakfast before heading to work when he sees that the strange guy had made some weird dishes with weird names. The guy says it's his favorite breakfast recipe and he's still adjusting. Howard says he'll call him Ty and tells Ty that his dishes seem like crap, and the names he gave them are crap too. He says the guy doesn't need to hurry because they're not opening the restaurant at that moment. Ty says he thought they were going to open in a few days and start making money. Howard says he's working on it but can't say exactly when they'll open. Anyway, he can stay at his house. So, our protagonist invited the guy who broke into his house and tried to assault his friend to live comfortably in his house. In what world does this exist? I don't know. Comment below what you think about it. Well, Howard tells the guy that there's food and space for him there, better than being on the street. We have a new Jesus Christ, my brothers. Arriving at the company, the e-girls were waiting for Howard, probably to beg him to continue doing live streams with them. He avoids them and says he's running late for work and will meet them later. In the office, a colleague tells Howard that Mr. Liu wants to talk to him. He says he's going and then asks what the guys are watching. The other colleague says it's a new internet celebrity and shows him the phone. And guess what? The guys were watching Howard and the flood of memes made about him. The colleague says this guy is sensational and tells Howard that he hit 7 darts in a row on target, and now everyone calls him Brother 7. Howard feels like burying his face in a hole. Arriving at Mr. Liu's office, Howard calls him, and he was already waiting for him, if you catch my drift. Then he says he knows that last night he and Sandy had gone to participate in the live stream with those e-girls, but for some reason, Howard didn't appear on the live, only that Brother 7 guy. He says Brother 7 is a very charming guy, and he says that literally licking his lips, so it's confirmed he is. Liu asks if Howard has his contact because he wants to manage him, and Howard says no, and he thought his outfit was awful. Liu says he knows nothing about fashion, and in the comments, everyone is praising this Brother 7. Everyone admires him. Howard asks why, and Liu says it's because he's cool, indifferent, has that Sigma aura, seems like a man of dignity. Liu says Howard needs to get in touch with this guy because they can make a lot of money with it. Howard says this is a bit beyond his duties. He's not paid for this. Liu says very well. He'll give him this opportunity to prove that he could be a good assistant. If he can get Brother 7's contact, he'll give our protagonist a promotion, meaning a salary increase and the chance to meet many important people. So Howard says the given mission is a mission accomplished, but deep down, he thinks there's no other way. After all, he needed money. Some time passes, and we see the two e-girls looking a bit sad because Howard apparently agreed to meet them there but hadn't shown up. Then Sandy appears, bringing Howard. The moment the e-girls see him, Chubby runs up to him, grabs him by the tie, and starts pouring it all out. She says she didn't want to make anyone a fool, but people didn't watch the fitness videos she made, so she started making videos of herself eating, up to the point where she became ugly. And from then on, she had to resort to more and more dramatic things, and that's the only way she can pay her bills. But what Howard said before leaving the live stream intrigued her. When she started her streaming career, her intention was to share wisdom with people, and she doesn't know how she ended up in the situation she's in now. She's almost at the point of opening an OnlyFans. She clasps her hands, pleading with him, emotionally saying she doesn't want to hurt anymore, doesn't want people to laugh at her anymore. She wants to make money in a decent way. Howard shakes her hand immediately and says, "Okay, let's do this," which makes the three e-girls very happy. A month passes, my friends, and finally, we see the system screen again, announcing that the next dream would begin the next day. Finally. Howard thinks to himself that the game doesn't even excite him anymore. What he wants to do now is put on his tight clothes and be Brother 7. Man, what did they do to our protagonist? He asks the audience if anyone is hungry, and a guy raises his hand saying, me. Then our waifu appears, saying she brought a little cake to satisfy his hunger, which makes the fans fall in love. Then bang, a cake hits the chubby guy's face. It was Brother 7, asking if it tastes good. The guy doesn't say anything until he screams yes, and the whole audience starts screaming along, Brother 7, Brother 7. Sabrina, who watches everything bored, wonders how it's possible for people to like this, and in this case, I'm also wondering the same thing. Mr. Liu tells her to simply enjoy these experiences and to look around at how everyone is excited. They are going to make a lot of money. From the stage, Chubby says that to start, they would throw the red wedding cloak, and whoever catches it will be Brother 7's husband or wife. The audience screams with excitement. Wait, didn't this woman just say she wanted to make money in a dignified way? Anyway, Mr. Liu goes crazy because he wants Brother 7's naked body more than anyone. But the red wedding cloak lands on none other than Sabrina's face. She is left bewildered, but the people around her don't give her a chance, and a fight begins to see who will be Brother 7's waifu, and apparently, Liu wins the fight. The event ends, and we see them talking. Liu says that Howard Chen is very annoying because he said he was going to the bathroom at the beginning of the event and had disappeared until now. Who would have thought? We have a Peter Parker here. Brother 7 says everything is fine. Howard told him everything and he threw the towel to say hi. Liu says he got the message, but Brother 7 said to be honest. He is Sigma and doesn't want to get involved with anyone, much less represent a company. So if they want him to promote any of their products, he will charge a high price. Sabrina said he's being unreasonable, but before they could continue the conversation, someone appears, telling Mr. Liu that he shouldn't have underestimated him. It's Lawrence's henchman. He arrives smoking a little cigarette and tells Brother 7 that he chose the wrong company because his company is much better and blah blah blah. Brother 7, says he won't work for his company either, but the guy tells him not to rush and that he will offer 5 times more than Mr. Liu's offer. Sabrina is already disappointed because this is very Lawrence's style, but Brother 7 says he won't accept his offer, and the reason has nothing to do with money. The guy asks what it is then, and the main character says it's no big deal. He just hates him. This makes the guy uncomfortable and causes the other two listening to the conversation to hold back laughter. Then, Brother 7 turns around and says goodbye, while the guy gets angry, saying that he will regret this. Mr. Liu asks Sabrina if she now finds him likable, and she says that indeed, he seems to be a better person than she thought. Arriving home, Howard shows a credit card, and the strange guy is impressed with how he managed to save so much money so quickly. But he says they will have to pay 3 installments of the restaurant rent at once, and for that, they will need a large sum of money. So Howard pulls out another card and says this one will do. He explains that when he was 1-year-old, his parents put $100 on this card. When he turned 2, they added another $100, and as the years passed, they kept adding more. Even though they have a huge debt, his parents always insisted on putting whatever they could on this card until he turned 18. Then they handed the card to him and told him to go live his own life, and they would support him no matter what. The money they saved means a lot to Howard, just like the decision to run a restaurant. So he asks if the guy is ready. The guy gets tense and seems to reflect, until he says for them to give up on this. Howard is surprised, not understanding anything, and asks why. The guy says it's too late. He got another job and his parents worked so hard for it he should keep that money. The scene cuts to the suck-up showing Lawrence's henchman photos, proving that Brother 7 is actually Howard Chen, who is also the same person who slapped meat on his face at their gathering. Apparently, the suck-up took photos of our our protagonist in secret. The henchman with slicked back hair asks his minion if he has the contact of that brutal fighter friend of his who recently got out of prison, and the minion says yes, they had met recently. He said he gave some money to the guy, who was desperately in need, so he was available to do tasks for them in exchange. Then the slick-haired henchman looks again at the photo, proving that our protagonist is the famous Brother 7. And with a sinister look, he says it's time for them to settle the score. And so the manhwa chapter ends. The next chapter begins with water and blood. Howard in a robe sinks to the bottom of what seems to be a pool, with blood gushing from his throat. He wonders if he's going to die, and when everything starts to turn white, we go back 15 hours ago. Someone called his name, waking him up. It was Liu calling him. Howard apologizes and says that just now, a woman had knocked on his door looking for someone. Liu asks who, and he says the woman was looking for his roommate who had moved in last night. Liu asks if it's serious that he still lives with a roommate. It's about time to find a better place, especially now that he's going to start getting a good salary. He could look for a place closer to the company. Howard asks if getting a salary increase means he passed his test, and Liu says, of course he did. He managed to arrange a meeting with Brother 7, even though Brother 7 refused to work for them. It was a pleasure to see him put down Lorenz's henchman. Then he remembers to introduce Howard to his new colleagues, the driver Chip and the secretary Helen, and says they will be seeing each other a lot. Comment below if you remember who these people are. Howard greets them and asks what they will do next, and Liu replies, meet an intelligent and powerful woman. Well, as we can see, she indeed has great power in addition to a cute kitten. She seems to be someone really important because in her first scene, we already see her saying no to Sabrina and the other two. Liu arrives with our protagonist, and the waifu gets all excited. Sabrina says they came to talk about business cooperation. Why did he bring Howard here? Liu then replies that he forgot to inform her that Howard is now his assistant, so he introduces him to Mrs. Sharon Yang, the CEO of Far East Limited. Our protagonist extends his hand to greet her, but the woman simply ignores him. She asks the cute kitten if he is sleepy without even looking at Howard, then finally says she has little time for leisure and she doesn't want to talk about work. She can't wait to enjoy the hot spring, then turns around and leaves, leaving Howard wondering if he did something wrong. Liu tells him to chill out. She's just testing how patient they can be. Then he explains that her company, Far East Limited, has the largest e-commerce platform in the country. If they can get into their online channels, they'd be booming in no time, and it would be a success. The problem is the price she's asking for. It's too much, and she's trying to deceive them. Howard asks if they can't switch to another business partner. Why does it have to be her? Liu says they need to make it happen because Sabrina has a bet with their headquarters, and time is running out. If they don't meet this month's profit target soon, they probably won't see her again. Howard tries to understand what he meant by that. Then he remembers the dream, Sabrina telling him that she had set a goal for herself and couldn't call herself independent if she couldn't achieve it. He remembers the day he first saw her, the director of the new department. Liu approaches her and says they will try another meeting with her soon, and they can't give up on this opportunity. Sabrina asks what advantage they have. After all, this Sharon Young holds resentment against her father. This woman would be happy to see them fall. Liu thinks that only Sharon can help them promote the products nationwide in the blink of an eye, and that's the only way to meet the profit target. They have 3 days to make some progress. Otherwise, Sabrina will lose the bet with the company president. The two women who were there as extras say goodbye, and then he appears, the henchman using his bad boy skin, smoking a cigarette. He says he came to take Sabrina to Lawrence. Howard doesn't like this at all. Liu says there are still 3 days left for their bet to end, and he arrived too early. The henchman clicks his tongue and asks if they still don't know. Sabrina Luo is forced to meet Lawrence tomorrow and marry him as soon as possible to speed up the business cooperation. Sabrina is in shock. Howard realizes that this marriage of theirs is nothing more than a form of negotiation. Sabrina's father practically sold her to that old geezer in exchange for this business cooperation. Liu says it's absurd. Every father loves his daughter. Still, the henchman just says it's common knowledge that the capital chain of the Luo group will break, and it's understandable that Mr. Luo would give away his daughter. Howard understands it all. The entire Luo group is in trouble. To prove her ability, Sabrina used her performance at work as a bet. If she can't meet the target, she will be forced to marry this Lawrence, essentially sacrificing herself to save the company. Howard realizes that Sabrina is not at all interested in this Lawrence, and when Liu says they will never see her again, it's because this guy lives in a foreign country. Liu says he doesn't believe it and will call them to find out if it's true, but the henchman doesn't care, even sticking out his tongue. Sabrina says it's not not necessary. They know this is the kind of thing her father does. He has always been like this. He manipulates her life, decides her fate. What he does to her is suffocating. Liu tells Howard to go back to his room and wait for his call. Sabrina needs to rest a bit. The henchman laughs. He says she shouldn't have insisted on making that bet with Mr. Luo. After all this drama, she still has to marry that old limp who can hardly stand. If she wants to have children, she'll have to ask a sperm bank for help. And finally, he says she deserves it. Howard looks directly at him, with anger growing inside him. The guy realizes this and asks what he's looking at. It's none of his business. Then the protagonist's phone starts ringing. He answers, and it's one of the e-girls. She tells Howard that someone hired a group of haters to spread hate against them, as if someone were spreading fake news in a WhatsApp group or something. They're saying they're a cult. Howard asks the woman what they can do, sue everyone, but she says they can't do that. After all, everyone knows that suing someone who insults you on the internet only makes things worse. She says she'll talk to Sandy to see if they can come up with something and will contact him later. Howard hangs up the phone and then realizes the henchman watched everything. He then asks what Howard thinks about it, tells him it's just the beginning. The main course is just waiting for him, Brother 7. He says Howard is doomed, then turns things around and leaves. A few hours pass, and we see Howard sitting by the hotel pool. He reflects on the fact that Hans, the henchman, knows who he is. What will he do in retaliation? The e-girls haven't found a solution to the hater problem yet, and Sabrina and Liu also seem unsure of what to do. He thinks about Sabrina and what will happen if she fails, so he decides that he can't wait for Mr. Liu. He needs to go talk to this Sharon. Maybe they still have a chance to turn things around. He hears footsteps approaching, then sees that strange guy arriving all suspicious. The protag asks what he's doing there, and he replies that someone paid him to kill a man, then tells Howard he's sorry. We go back to the scene from the beginning of the chapter, with Howard sinking into a pool, wondering if this is how he's going to die, until a hand emerges from outside the pool, and the last thing Howard sees before passing out is her, Sharon Yang. Character created. Then Howard opens his eyes and sees her, the AI-63. She welcomes him, saying, "Welcome to the second game in the dream world." Howard says it's strange. Did he not die? How is he here? Aya says that the dead can't choose to enter the game and asks if his life is threatened in the real world. Then he remembers everything. The strange guy hired to kill him, saying he's a good man and the attack wasn't fatal. If he wants to survive, he should go to a hospital right away, leave the city, change his name, and never show up there again. Otherwise, not only he but everyone he knows will be killed. With a cut on his throat, Howard wonders why everything has to be difficult in his life. The last memories before he passed out made it clear to him that there was no other choice. He would have to fight for his life, for everything he believes in, for those he loves. Taking one last look back, he says that since there's no other option, let's go to war. That's the protagonist I wanted to see. The artificial intelligence tells him that the beast invasion challenge is very difficult to overcome. He will die quickly if he doesn't take any tools with him, but Howard says he doesn't need them. He'll train like crazy in this dream to become a better fighter. There's nothing that can stop him this time. Then he steps through the portal.
The Beast Invasion Challenge has begun. The player will take on the role of a warrior who survived a war. The player will have to explore, fight, and even escape. The difficulty level is 1, and you have 180 days to survive.
Howard didn't take long to orient himself this time. A bulletproof vest and a weapon already equipped automatically. This challenge is going to be easy. As he thinks this, he feels something dripping on his helmet. When he looks up, he sees a massive green gorilla, monstrous, devouring a person's body. The animal is hundreds of times larger than a normal gorilla. Howard has never seen anything so big. The pieces of the dead body fall around him. He takes a deep breath and then bolts as fast as he can before the creature gets him too, wondering how he's going to fight against that. He enters an abandoned building. The creature sees that he's hiding and tries to break through the walls. The beast's strength is monstrous. It's about to bring the entire building down. Howard reaches for his weapon but hesitates. He recalls that he entered this dream with the goal of training for when he returns to real life. Josh Tai is a trained trained killer. He puts the gun back in its holster. The giant gorilla, tired of playing, roars grotesquely and charges at him. Since it can't see Howard, it intends to bring the entire building down at once. Howard grabs an iron bar and positions himself. A whole wall is launched at him. The gorilla throws its weight against our protagonist. Howard realizes he's about to be crushed. Then he manages to anchor the iron bar to the ground, using the monster's own weight against it. The bar pierces the concrete wall, hitting the giant animal's eye. It roars in pain and runs away instantly, defeated. Howard breathes heavily, but also feels relieved. He had survived. He crawls out of the destroyed building thinking that he needs to be more careful from now on. Just as he thinks this, he notices someone approaching. With no time to think, he grabs the nearest iron bar, stands up, activating his aiming skill when suddenly... It was her, Sharon Yang, but it was too late. He had already thrown the iron bar. However, somehow she throws herself backward and manages to dodge the bar. Howard asks if she's okay, thinking she might be a monster. She asks what he's doing there. He should be in a hospital. He doesn't understand. A hospital? Then she explains that he was soaked in blood when he burst into her room out of nowhere and then fell into the pool. She called an ambulance and saw him being taken away by them. Then Howard understands what happened. After he got injured, he must have run in search of help. He probably entered her room by mistake. In the real world, he must be sleeping in some hospital bed now. Howard tells her that when he woke up, he was in these strange ruins and asks how she ended up there, thinking to himself that he didn't choose to start the game or ask for a copy this time. The woman says she also woke up in this place out of nowhere, heard a noise, and went to see what was happening. Howard mutters to himself, something is wrong with this game. Anyway, he thanks the woman for calling the ambulance. If it weren't for her, he would be dead. She tells him to save the kind words for later when they find a way to survive. She mentions that, as he can see, he's good at throwing things, so he might be useful in helping her. He asks, help with what? Then she points to a city in the distance that looks somewhat submerged and asks if he doesn't find it familiar. The protagonist looks closely and then realizes it's their company's building. She explains that based on the terrain and the weather conditions of the nearby buildings, this is probably what the Earth looks like 300 to 400 years in the future. In other words, they just experienced a time travel. The wind smells bad and the water is likely caustic. Sea levels continue to rise, and perhaps in the end, the Earth will be flooded. Howard realizes that this is how the world's decline will happen. Sharon says the good news is they're not the only living humans. She can probably find a suitable habitat if they have some time. The bad news is that there are many monsters, like that giant gorilla. Then she asks if he wants to work with her. She can lead the way, and he can protect them both. But Howard first mentions that she just said they time traveled, and she doesn't seem bothered by it at all. She's even making plans. How can she not be scared? The woman responds that she just wants to survive. They continue their way through what seems to be a desert. She asks Howard if he was some kind of dart-throwing athlete or something, and he says no, throwing darts was just a hobby. Then he tells the woman that he didn't expect her to remember his name. After all, when they greeted each other, she didn't even look at him. The woman says that at that moment, he didn't mean much to her. It was a waste of time to talk to him. Howard says that's harsh and warns her that if she sizes up people around her that way, she'll never have any friends again. The woman doesn't say anything because they seemingly arrived at the place she pointed out. He says she's good. It looks like a fortress. Then she responds, saying that you only have friends after you value yourself enough, and asks if he doesn't think so. However, Howard suddenly covers the woman's mouth and pulls her behind some rocks. A creature that looks like a giant centipede passes right above their heads. Howard pulls out his weapon, tells her that this fortress might be a disappointment, hands her the gun, and tells her to use it to protect herself. She thanks him and says she'll help him if he needs it. Howard looks again at the fortress. No monsters in sight. They were about to enter. As they walk inside the fortress, Sharon finds it strange that the building and the ground are clean, as if someone cleans this place every day. But why haven't they seen any human beings? Then they stop on what looks like a military post. Pieces of trees formed something that looked like an eagle's nest, but an eagle's nest cannot be that big. And at that moment, they see the creature, a bizarre mutant eagle. The eagle flies over the place but seems to be heading straight for them. Sharon tells them to hide quickly, but Howard doesn't move. He stares at the creature and then tells her to hide because he's fine. The woman asks if he's gone mad. His steel spears won't kill that creature. Howard says that's exactly what he wants. He remembers the moment when Josh Tai put a knife to his throat and said that even in that situation, he could do nothing but tremble in fear. He said it was ridiculous for Howard to talk about changing his own fate. Anyone could kill him effortlessly. Howard tells himself that when the dream ends, if he can only remember one thing, let it be how fearless and brave he managed to be. So, so, he takes his position, ready to throw his steel spears. The monstrous eagle screamed as our protagonist threw as many spears as he could. In frenzied movements, he launched one after another without stopping. The spears hit the creature, some pierced its wings, others went through its body. Sharon couldn't believe it when she saw the enormous bird fall from the sky, lifeless. The green blood of the creature splashed on Howard, and immediately, he felt a burning sensation, as if it were acid. He fell to his knees, trying to rid himself of the burns. Sharon ran to him, but there was nothing she could do. Howard screamed in pain. That liquid was corroding his skin. Suddenly, gears started to move, and the gate of the fort opened. A rowboat emerged from inside.
A wounded human has been detected. Emergency medical system activated. Clean, roll, clean.
From its only remaining arm, the robot took out a syringe. Sharon asked who it was, but the robot, without responding, plunged the needle into our protagonist's back and injected its contents. Howard felt an overwhelming dizziness.
Running low on electrical power. The system will soon shut down.
Then he collapsed on the ground. A little later, he woke up inside what seemed to be a military base. Sharon said he looked fine, except for his hair, which seemed to have gone wild, probably a side effect of the injection. Howard thought he had been injured by the corrosive liquid and asked where they were. Sharon said they were inside the fortress. When he was in danger, that robot injected something into him, and the wounds simply healed miraculously. Maybe when he woke up, he could tell them the story of this place. At that moment, a red light illuminated the robot's head.
Fully charged. A large, dirty area has been spotted. Clean, roll, clean, roll, clean, roll.
Then the robot went outside the fort, lifted what looked like its head, and released a flamethrower on the monster's corpse. Howard was puzzled, but Sharon said it was made with advanced technology, and perhaps it needed some kind of code to activate it. She remembered the number written in front of the robot, 2003, so she called it.
Robot 2003 for domestic tasks has received a new request. The autopilot mode ends, and the intelligent program mode will be initiated for use. The autopilot mode has been on for 1,130 days. It received 363 attacks from different creatures, cleaned 45,000 tons of garbage, suffered 672 damage. On the verge of deactivation. Maintenance needed to.
A blue light started to shine intensely from the robot, and Howard and Sharon couldn't comprehend what was happening.
Hey, I knew this day would come. I didn't work hard enough. That's why humans left me behind. As long as I clean the fort every day, humans will finally return.
Sharon asks if he means there are no humans there, and this place is only tidy because he cleans every day?
That's right. Humans will return one day when they know how clean this place is, just like it used to be.
Sharon is thoughtful, and Howard tries to understand what's going on in her mind. Then she asks the robot if it knows where the humans went. Did they leave any message when they left?
They said that if they couldn't fly within a year, it meant they had probably gone to paradise. Is paradise a nice place, isn't it? I thought about going to them, but I couldn't find paradise on the map. Could you tell me where paradise is?
Howard tells the robot that it's better if it doesn't know. Then he tells Sharon that because this robot has been on autopilot for 3 years, the people there were probably already dead. Sharon tells the robot to take them to the storage room. It was time to make new plans. Then she turns and walks away, leaving Howard thinking about the fact that even after going through so many problems, she's still so calm that she can think about making new plans. In a strange way, Sharon Yang's emotions are truly stable.
Here are the human weapons, but there is no ammunition. These compressed energy bars are the only food left. Humans said they were as tough as jerky and could last for 100 years. Humans used this chemical composition to heal wounds. They called it Medusa's tears. If used excessively, rust will grow on the body.
Howard asks if that's what the robot injected into him and if he's going to turn into stone. The robot responds that the potion's effect is strong, but he is safe. Then a pair of scissors comes out of it, and as it cuts Howard's hair, it says,
"This potion cannot completely fix the nervous system. Some humans fought too hard and relied too much on the potion, so they ended up in a vegetative state."
Howard thinks it's a pity because he was already thinking that this potion would help him become a master in martial arts.
Besides this storage, the field also has an underground reservoir and an energy center that constantly supplies electricity.
Upon hearing this, Howard immediately asks if the place has bathrooms because he smells really bad.
Heading to the bathroom.
Sharon asks the robot if there is an energy center, why it didn't recharge, and the robot responds that it is just a task robot. Without permission, it cannot use human resources. Then Sharon says that a machine will always be a machine and asks him to show her other places. The robot obviously agrees. Sharon Sharon is in a control room in front of a monitor with a strange language. She wonders what language this is. It looks like scribbles. The robot appears, saying that it brought the map for her, but at that moment, the robot's axis breaks and it crashes to the ground. The woman doesn't seem to care at all and just asks if he can still translate what is written on the monitor. The robot says it's fine and that this is a new language that humans invented to record the rise and fall of civilization. To ensure all intelligent beings understand the meaning, they used scribbles to narrate the stories. However, the language had not been recorded in him, so he cannot read the records. Sharon finds it considerate of them to consider how to deal with the situation even after the death of their civilization. However, when she opened the map, she didn't like what she saw. They were on an isolated island. To be exact, this is the only island on Earth. As the statistics show, in 179 days, this land will also be flooded by the acid ocean. Now all the mutant beasts on the planet have gathered in this place.
To stay safe, Master. Please stay in the shelter.
Sharon begins to analyze their current situation. They have no food or ammunition. Fierce beasts are everywhere, and there is no one to rescue them. In other words, there is nothing they can do but wait until death reaches them. She seems to have accepted the situation. While tying her hair, Sharon asks the robot if humans left clothes there. She wants to give some to Howard. The robot says yes. The clothes are in the rooms, and she doesn't need to worry. He will take care of it himself. The woman looks closely at the robot and asks if he knows why humans abandoned him. He asks if it's because he didn't work hard enough. She walks over his body and then says no. It's because he didn't know how to show them how valuable he is, and she doesn't want to end up like him. Some time passes, and we see someone opening the bathroom door. Our protagonist was taking a shower when he turns around and sees the robot lying on the floor. Immediately, he asks what happened to him.
Please don't leave me behind. I can still work. I can clean. I want to be with the humans. I miss the time I spent with the humans.
Then we see what would be the robot's memories. From a time when humanity still survived, animals still existed, children played and called for him. He was useful to them, until suddenly he wasn't anymore. And since then, he has been alone in this place, completely abandoned.
I beg you, I can still work. I don't know what paradise is like, but I will do my best to make this place cleaner than paradise.
Damn, someone give a hug to this robot. Howard puts back what would be an eye in place and says that the parts are worn out. He asks how robots are repaired, and 2003 says that in the maintenance room, there were human engineers who repaired the robots. Howard says there are no engineers, so he'll have to try it himself. But at that moment, the door behind him opens, and Sharon enters the bathroom in a robe. She says the world is about to be destroyed. He doesn't need to be so shy, and there are some clean clothes she set aside for him. He thanks her all shyly and tells her to put them on the table. She does that, and then tells him that they are in a very bad situation, but they still have a chance to survive. What she doesn't understand is why humans left this shelter that had food and a roof to risk being killed. Howard responds that 2003 talked about a place they were looking for, but she says it doesn't matter. The whole world is going to collapse soon. No matter where they try to go, they can't stop the world from collapsing unless the place they were looking for can protect them from the great destruction. Only such a place would be worth it, even if it meant they could die on the way. She removes her robe while continuing to talk that the records must contain useful information, and with some time, she will be able to decipher it. The problem is that the sea level was rising more and more. Monsters on land will continue to gather, which will put them in increasing danger. As she enters the bathtub, she continues saying that she hopes they can continue working as a team until they get help. She will research ways to escape while he keeps them safe, but Howard is barely listening. He is completely intimidated by the fact that the woman undressed in front of him out of nowhere and wonders if she is not afraid that he will attack her. He agrees with what she said and glances sideways, then realizes that under the robe there was a weapon. Howard wonders what that means. Sharon says she thought she might have to resort to some special methods to calm him, but now she is more relieved to see that he is a person who can control himself. In this critical life or death moment, a mental breakdown would destroy all their chances of survival. Yeah, guys, this woman is completely different from Sabrina. She planned to use this weapon to calm him down in case he lost control. At no point did she fear any kind of sexual attack. Her only fear was losing him, her little helper, as he might have some mental collapse. This woman sees the bigger picture. She is much smarter than the average person. Howard tells her that he has something to do, then takes 2003 and leaves the bathroom. Sharon stays there thinking about how Howard is just an ordinary person. The world is falling apart, but he is still bound by morality. But that's good because she won't have to spend much time dealing with him. Some time passes, and we hear the sound of welding. Howard was fixing 2003, who was already chattering again. Our protagonist asks the robot why he didn't say a word when Sharon was with them. He thought it was so broken that it couldn't say anything anymore.
The human language is rich in meaning. I cannot distinguish the nuances behind the words.
Howard agrees and says that Sharon Yang can do whatever she wants as long as she doesn't interrupt his training to kill the beasts. The robot is amazed when he says this and says it's dangerous, but Howard says he has no other choice and explains to him that in another world, he was also living in a time of destruction. The mutant animals there almost took his life, and the killing wouldn't stop unless the waves of fall disappear. He says that maybe the robot doesn't understand this, but he can't imagine how much courage it takes for a hard-working and indebted worker to force himself out of his comfort zone and try to break down his barriers. He traded everything he had for an achievement that in the end was crushed by someone else without any effort. Howard clearly understands that for him, the true death is surrendering and running away. He needs to be able to move forward.
Another world? Do you mean the paradise where humans went?
Howard asks why he always talks about these paradise things and says that for him, his home is his paradise. It's a place where there is safety, loyalty, value, light, and the power of omnipotent healing. If he can overcome this challenge, he can save his home.
I understand. Paradise is amazing. No wonder all humans. Is there anything I can help you with, Master? I would love to help you save your paradise.
Howard says, of course, yes. He will definitely get hurt fighting the monsters, and he will need him to heal quickly. Besides, he doesn't need to keep calling him Master all the time. He can call him Howard, and that's fine. The robot finds this amazing because only humans call each other by name. Howard tells him that if he were a robot girl, it might be nice for him to keep calling him Master, but a rusty machine doesn't interest him. The second day of the apocalypse arrives, Sharon observes the work Howard did with the robot. And my friend, check out this armored robot. It looks like a mech. It even has a little shield. I want to see who will mess with him now. Sharon shows our protagonist large crossbow bolts that the people there used to defend themselves against attacking monsters, and he takes them for himself. Then he starts heading out of the fort because, after all, his goal there was to hunt beasts and get stronger, right? But the woman tells him to wait. He says they made an agreement about each one's role, so he was going out to kill the monsters. She says that it's unnecessary. There's no reason for him to go out hunting the creatures. His current role is to keep the fort safe. Howard says they only have 180 days. He doesn't want to wait until the monsters come to them all at once. She doesn't understand why he's looking for trouble. She acknowledges that he has skills to kill animals, but now they are dealing with more serious problems. Has he forgotten how corrosive the blood of these creatures can be? She saw a monkey over 2 stories tall. He's risking his life unnecessarily. They can't make any mistakes. When she finds the place where the humans went, they can fight to get there. But for now, it's better if they conserve their strength and accumulate more power. Howard simply asks if she's really trying to tell him what to do and what not to do in his own world. The woman doesn't understand what he meant. Howard thinks about the fact that in real life, he's almost dead in bed. A bunch of people are trying to kill them. Thinking about these things, how could he stay in the shelter and not go out? He has to get stronger as soon as possible. Then he tells the woman that he agreed to take care of her just because she once saved his life. But this agreement doesn't mean she can interfere with his work. Truth be told, he doesn't care about how this world will end. If she feels uncomfortable, she can simply leave at any time. Sharon, after taking this harsh rebuke, maintains her composure and says that she was just concerned about his safety and wishes him a safe journey. Howard calls 2003 and leaves, thinking that all the things he said to her in the end are meaningless because she's just an NPC. But the woman goes into turmoil because she realizes that she was completely wrong about him. Howard isn't thinking or behaving like any mediocre man. Even with the world sinking, she can't understand what's going on in his mind. At that moment, a snake passes between her legs. Sharon turns around, and suddenly, she's in a forest. Sharon, what value do you have? What value do you have? A hand grabs her shoulder. She turns around immediately, but there's no one there. Sharon. She screams for these voices in her head to go away. Join us. Join us. She ties up her hair, and then the hallucination ends. Another psychotic episode. Why would this happen again? There's no need to hurry. She still has time, but she needs to develop a friendly relationship with Howard. Otherwise, she'll probably die. The story continues, and we see the robot telling Howard that his tone while talking to the woman now was different from yesterday's. Howard tells him that his attitude changed when he first went there, and that if he had been tougher in the past, he wouldn't have let other people hold a knife to his throat.
For humans, the neck is one of the most important parts. Why did you do something so dangerous?
Howard tells him that after the first dream, he mistakenly started to think that all people were good. Then he remembers a woman who had come to him in real life looking for someone, and the person she was looking for was Josh Tai. But Howard informs her that he had left the night before. The woman tells him that Josh Tai killed someone because he wanted to save her life. He's not a bad guy. He spent 20 years in prison for that, but now that he was out, he was already getting involved with the wrong people again. She asks Howard if he sees him again, to try to convince him to leave this life behind. Howard tells the robot that it doesn't matter if he's in a dream or in real life. He shouldn't fantasize anymore about human nature or saving lives. Then we see the moment when he has a knife to his throat. Josh Tai asks if he really wants to help him. He thinks he's who, God? He tells Howard to give him a reason to work with him after all. He wasn't rich, nor powerful. He had nothing to offer him. Howard tells Robot 2003 that saving lives is the job of a hero. He had to stop fantasizing. Most people are not heroes. They can barely follow the rules of being a decent person. The robot, who had been listening, says,
"Once again, it's human language that I cannot understand."
Then the two finally find what they had gone looking for. Beasts. Mutant wolves. 2003 says these wolves are very fierce. Howard tells him not to worry. That's all he wanted. Now it was time to work.
"Howard, be careful. They have higher fight scores than you."
Howard says nothing, just pulls out his spear, and his heart races. We see him with his skin from the first season. The robot says the score is increasing. Our protag is going chest to chest against the mutant wolves, which come at him with everything they've got. But they are quickly struck by Howard's spears. 2003 just watches the fight from afar. Howard steps on the head of one of the wolves while another comes at him. The mutant wolf salivates, but Howard manages to grab it by the neck. The animal struggles to break free, but our protag squeezes the animal's neck with all his strength, making drops of blood from the animal splatter on his skin. After the fight was over, 2003 tells him not to touch the mutant creatures with his bare hands, because the liquid from the green pustules is also corrosive. Howard tells him that's part of the training. In real life, you can't always have knives by your side. In most cases, you fight with your own hands.
"Hey, isn't that a tent from our shelter? Why would it be here?"
Howard goes to the tent the robot found. He smells a horrible smell. This tent must have been occupied by wolves for a long time. This box also comes from the shelter. Howard asks what it is.
"Wheat seeds. That's the symbol of our shelter."
Howard asks him if they were farmers or something like that, and the robot replies,
"Yes, there used to be a gunpowder shelter, an armor shelter, and a plant shelter. We all had different manufacturing tasks and exchanged goods and materials with each other. As the waves of corrosion advanced, these shelters gradually turned into unproductive land."
Howard says that sounds quite familiar. Then he realizes that several monsters form a team and guard a box like this one. Apparently, this game wasn't just a typical survival game where players are forced to build things and explore around. He asks 2003 if this environment is suitable for agriculture.
"Of course, every robot in the wheat shelter is equipped with the ability to cultivate land in different situations. Give me some stones and I will produce soil. I will make use of the beast's feces and ashes after burning the monsters. Then I can cook fertilizers."
Howard says he understands and asks the robot if there isn't a body of that bird he killed there in the shelter. Tells the robot that they will spend the day looking for more seeds, and at night, they can start cultivating plants.
"I would love to cultivate. However, when the corroded ocean comes, the plants will die."
Howard tells him that when humans return, they will find their work useful.
"What? Will humans really return? How do you know that?"
Our protag remembers the AI telling him that the main challenge of this game is to see how much the future of humans can be improved with the help of the players. Then he tells the robot that humans will be taken into account in the final evaluation. He is sure they will return, but he thinks he won't be able to witness their return. He has 180 to stay there. It's better to have some basic equipment.
"You are right, you are right. As long as the shelter returns to what it was before, humans will return. Paradise is nothing compared to the old shelter. As humans used to say, the shelter was like something they wouldn't abandon."
Howard asks if he means a home, and 2003 agrees. It was his home. A few hours pass, and we see our protag fighting a giant mutant spider. The creature knocks him down, but he manages to grab a stone. He goes after the spider with everything and strikes its head with all his strength, and continues striking without stopping even with the corrosive blood of the creature splashing on him, until he is sure the creature is dead.
"Your fight score decreased by 20 points. Did you really practice during this period?"
Howard asks him what this score is.
It is calculated based on the creature's physical strength and fight status. You had 90 points when you were at your peak and then dropped to 70.
Howard tells him that he has never lost a single battle. He doesn't understand what the robot is trying to say.
I meant that your desire to fight has decreased, and your focus is not on the fight. It's more like you're using your physical power to vent your anger.
Our protag finds it funny how the robot can understand what is going on inside him, and tells 2003 that he wonders how someone could be trained to be a fighting master in a dream. When he said that, it was just a joke. In real life, the real enemies are people, unexpected attacks, intangible pressure. In a civilized society, you can't fix everything with fists. He wonders if this training can really work.
Why should you go back to the other world you talked about? You can see this place as your home. Let's plant fruit trees, vegetables, and build our house together.
Howard tells him that he can't call this place home if his family isn't here, and that this was just a dream, but that his idea wasn't bad. He should make this place great again, use it as something to keep his hopes up. So they return to the shelter. Sharon greets him, saying it was a good harvest, and Howard asks her what happened to the body of the giant bird he killed. The woman says that monsters have many chemicals in their bodies, and their meat is not edible. She says that the body of that bird would attract other monsters, so she cleaned it up. Howard didn't expect that, but he tells himself it's okay. Tomorrow he'll kill other monsters and use them to make fertilizer. He tries to bite the dried meat, but realizes something's wrong. It's like his jaw doesn't have the strength to chew. Maybe it's a side effect of using that robot's healing potion too many times, or from getting too much acid in the face. He decides to soak the meat in water for a while to soften it and be able to eat it, leaving the woman there without saying a word to her. She continues to find his behavior very strange, but anyway, he brought seeds for the shelter. Some time passes, and we see Howard asking 2003 if there's more of that healing potion somewhere because they only had one more. He replies that this medication was never a rare resource. Each shelter used to have many of them. He suggests they go to a relatively safe shelter for exploration. Maybe they'll find something useful. Howard says he liked the idea and says he has to prepare for it. Sharon comes with a bowl of noodles. She says he seemed to have trouble chewing the food at dinner, so she used the grains he brought to cook noodles, and that he should eat while it's hot. He asks if she's kidding, but she says some of them weren't used. She ground them into powder and saved it. Howard doesn't say anything, but inside, we know he must be mad. The robot was just there quietly listening to Mom and Dad argue. Sharon asks if he planned to plant those seeds, because this wasn't a suitable environment for plant cultivation. In half a year, everything will be flooded. There's no point in cultivating anything here. Howard says he didn't expect her to ruin the seeds so quickly, but he's used to having many problems before achieving something. He suggests she doesn't do anything on her own before consulting someone, and tells her to keep the noodles, just don't let the robot see it because otherwise he'll get mad. The woman starts to suspect that our protag is really going crazy, because one moment the guy goes out to adventure just because he felt like it, and now he wants to cultivate plants. She sees the robot and thinks that 2003 has been trying to win their sympathy. Is he the problem? The third day of the apocalypse arrives. We see Howard going out for a hunt. He tells the robot that 3 potions will be enough for him to save himself in case of an emergency.
It's the first time you've visited the deserted fields. Your safety comes first.
Sharon arrives, asking Howard if they can have a chat. He asks what she wants, and she says she was looking through the records of the people who lived there and found some installation instructions for robot upgrades, and that there are actually many new functions they can add to him. She says she knows a bit about electronics. Maybe she can try to refine 2003. He asks if this can really work. She replies that whether she succeeds or not doesn't matter. Robot 2003 is old and ruined. If she fails, at least they will still have his data to use as future reference. But if they let it get to the point where the internal chip is too broken, it will be too late to get anything useful from him. Howard says 2003 has always been loyal to humans. Doesn't she find it a bit rude to squeeze the maximum value out of him like this? And she responds that he's just a machine, like a computer or a cell phone. She's just trying to make the best of it. Then she asks if he really sees him as his friend. Howard says he hates that sarcastic tone. Does he become less of a man for showing sympathy? In the past, he even thought about making friends with a tiger. Does she have a problem with that? And he finishes by saying that a true machine is one that emphasizes only results and ignores the process. He tells her that they have very different opinions. It's better for them to talk less to avoid fights. I think I've seen this somewhere, folks. Well, at least we know where it's going to end, right? Sharon thought about how foolish he is when suddenly someone grabs her arm. The voices in her head keep happening more often. Some time passes, and we see another one of those mutant eagles. Our protag asks why they're okay there and haven't attacked them yet.
This is a scavenger. This type of animal is attracted to dying creatures or corpses. They don't get upset if you stay away from their nests.
Howard says they need to clean up that nest on top of the shelter once and for all.
Howard, the reason for the corrosive ocean spreading is that humans used to fight a lot. It's a valuable lesson for you to learn. Right now, you and Mrs. Yang have already shown signs of future fights. Could you stop having these disputes?
He finds it curious that there's a backstory to this dream. Asks why people fought.
People of different colors represented different powers. They negotiated and argued. They saw the reach of corrosion expand, but did nothing.
Howard says he didn't go that far. That's a much more complicated problem. But he admits he got a little carried away when talking to Sharon. He says that in real life, some people impose their opinions on others and try to label them. Those who obey are seen as high class, and the others are only categorized at lower levels. The root of people's disputes is the excessive emphasis on differences. He tells the robot not to worry. It's the second time he's in a dream. He knows it's just a game. He won't hold a grudge against a virtual NPC. That would be very stupid. Some time passes, and we see the two lurking for something. The robot tells Howard that their task today is to explore the deserted fields. Howard says he's right, but he found something interesting. An abandoned truck with a creature that looks like some kind of mutant lizard sitting on top. Howard says that truck looks like it has something good inside. The robot asks if he's kidding, because the beast's fighting power is literally 100 times more than his.
This beast is of a dominant class, the class of the strongest predator in this land. You're going to need a tank to beat it.
Howard says he's not going to fight the beast alone. He's not that stupid. In this situation, they have to play like an experienced player. First, they're not going to leave this place now that they've arrived there. Second, he's supposed to press the F5 key. Basically, he made a joke that only gamers will get. Then he asks the robot if he trusts him. Then we see fire. Something caught the lizard's attention. It was 2003 breathing fire as he ran back and forth. The mutant lizard gets all agitated and goes after him, giving an opportunity to our protagonist. He goes to the truck and realizes he was right. The truck was full of loot. There was honey, a musical instrument, a weapon full of ammunition, a lot of alcohol that he could drink or even turn into bombs. And there was something that seemed special, a shiny red gem with some strange things around it. Howard says he would like to have a bag with him there, and he'll have to take only the most important things for now. So he grabs weapons, fertilizer, the red gem, and those things that seem to be frozen eggs. He thinks it's difficult to carry everything in that cloth. The container of the gem takes up too much space. It's better for him to get it out of there right away because 2003 could run out soon. When he goes to grab the gem, he feels something like dust around it, small particles floating around it, and then a chemical reaction happens. The stone is thrown forward with force, and Howard is thrown out of the truck along with all the loot. The stone was expelling so much energy that even the truck is thrown into the air. It even flips after flying away.
Howard, be careful.
The lizard had noticed his presence. Now, it's screwed. Our protagonist gathers the loot as quickly as possible and runs away, wondering why the hell that gem went crazy out of nowhere and flew like a rocket. Then he enters a crevice to protect himself. The animal wouldn't be able to reach him there, but that strange gem continued to be crazy, dragging the truck for meters until it crashes into the rocks. A massive explosion that drags the terrain and throws debris everywhere. Howard and the lizard are also thrown far away by the force of the explosion. He manages to hold on by a thread a little more, and he would fall into the corrosive ocean. But right in front of him was the lizard, looking at him. The mutant animal starts to inflate its green pustules around its head. They become more and more swollen with that disgusting corrosive liquid, until it shoots 2 jets of acid through its eyes straight at Howard. The liquid raised a curtain of smoke.
Howard, hang in there. I'm coming to rescue you.
He had released everything he had grabbed. The only thing Howard was still holding were the syringes with the healing potions. He had used 3 at once, while the extremely corrosive acid fell directly on his face. The animal, already considering itself the winner, turns its back and walks away.